So we're here at a very wet Anglesey today to test out the fast road geometry changes that we made to the M3 back in the workshop, and we're going to see if there's any difference in the handling, the levels of grip, and take a look at that tyre wear. Obviously that is going to be slightly affected with the weather conditions, we're aware of that, but we'll get a good feel for if it's made a difference to the chassis in general. We're actually here today on the Muff Wash private track day down at Anglesey, and we're here offering our setup services. So we do this on the RMA track days too, and we set up our motorsport flat patch and we offer setups to different cars on the day, pre-booked as well, and today we've got this Cayman GT4 on this morning, and we're going to be giving that a full fast road geometry setup. So there's quite a big difference between the Porsche GT cars and the BMW M cars in terms of adjustment from factory. The Porsche GT cars come with much more adjustment than the BMWs. So on these we've got ride heights, we can set rake angle, we can adjust the anti-roll bars front and rear, and camber and tow front and rear. So a huge amount of adjustment in comparison to an M car where we're limited to rear camber, rear tow, front tow, and that's your lot without adding components. So we're quite limited on the track days in terms of what we can actually do on the day, so we're limited to just doing the setups. We can't install components on the day like we can in the workshop, but we can get the most out of your car using the adjustment points that it's here with, and that's what we're doing today on this Porsche and a few more throughout the day as well. So one of the major benefits of getting the setup done on the track days with our motorsport flat patch is that you get a direct before and after. So we can do your setup after you've done a few laps, we can change the settings, you go back out on the same track on the same day in the same conditions, and you can feel that exact before and after. So it's quite a rare opportunity to get that when it comes to setup. Usually it's being driven to a workshop setup and then tested at a later date, whereas on these track days you get that opportunity to get that direct before and after and see exactly what those setup changes have done to the car. On these days we use the motorsport flat patch to do the setups on. So this is a full flat patch with corner weights laid under each wheel. Those corner weights are laser leveled before we begin the day, so we know we're working on a perfect flat patch. So all of our camber readings, all of our corner weighting readings, and all of our tow readings are going to be perfect and not altered by the lay of the land. One thing we're doing to this Porsche now is we're going to be increasing front camber, lowering the nose a touch, and then changing those geometry settings all around the car to effectively reduce understeer. That's what the main thing we're looking for in these Porsche GT cars, is they come out the factory with a huge amount of understeer. Especially on circuit, you'll find that the outside edge of your tyres get stripped down to chords quite quickly, particularly at Anglesey where the tarmac is exceptionally rough. So what we do is we change the front end mainly to get more out of that nose and to get them much more pointy and a lot more neutral. We do also change the rear settings, but less aggressively than what we're going to do at the front end. So that's what Alex is doing here. He's currently changing ride heights, and he's going to be lowering that nose to increase rake angle on the chassis just to get the rotation we're looking for out of the car. So we've been very kindly invited down today by the team at Muff Wash. Dan here is going to just hand over and tell you all about Muff Wash a little bit and what they offer and some of their services.
So it's first track day we've organised and it's peeing it down, so it's going quite well. Everyone's having fun, but we're a detailing company. We've got a few units based around sort of Wilmslow and around the northwest. So we just thought we'll get all our customers together for a day, show the cars getting used properly. Thought it'd be a nice hot summer's day. It's not.
Yeah, we're not having the best luck really. This is our third track day in the BM, and it's the second absolutely torrential one, and they've all been in the summer, so yeah, not straightforward. But yeah, we've done your GT4 RS as well, haven't we? We've set that up recently. Again, just help with that front tyre wear, get the nose in, and just get rid of that understeer, which makes a big difference, so definitely worth doing as well. Following on from the GT4 setup, we've now got this F80 M3 on, and it came in as completely standard, and we're just putting our fast road settings on this car that we've just put onto our car as well. One limitation that you find with this chassis very early on is to get enough rear camber at the back, you struggle to start getting your tow settings on tow in again. So the only way to get around that is to either run less camber, which is what we've had to do on both these chassis. It's not where we'd really want the camber. We had to back that off to get the toe in that we're looking for, to get that grip back into the chassis. So that's a real limitation. So the only way around that really is to fit a rear toe arm, and that adjustable toe arm gets rid of those limitations. You can set camber wherever you desire on the back using the eccentric bolt, and then the toe arm allows you to get whatever toe setting you're then looking for. So that's quite an early upgrade we're going to be making to our car, just so we can get the geometry we're specifically looking for. So despite the conditions, we managed to get out on the circuit earlier. This morning they were running the full layout, so they're going to coastal this afternoon, so we made sure to get out on circuit this morning, even though it's absolutely chucking down. Even though it's very wet out there, we still had quite a lot of grip in the chassis, and there's still a few points to note. So we had quite good stable throttle. We had it in MDM mode, so part slip, and on full throttle coming out the corners. It had very slight oversteer, but it was manageable, and you could rotate the car quite nicely and bring it back again, so it wasn't snappy at all, and it was a really nice chassis to work with in the rain. One thing though that is still there heavily and is really quite prominent is the understeer. So in the rain it is amplified because we've got less grip in general anyway, but it is really showing its face now. So coming into apex, even if you're just a little bit too hot, it'll just push the nose heavily and it'll just wash out to corner exit. So managing that, you just got to back right off the throttle, wait for it to return and get back on again. So dialing out that understeer is something that is very important at this stage. So we have brought the data log with us today, but we've not put it in because in these conditions we're not going to be pulling any amount of G that we would in the dry anyway, and that's what we'd be looking for. So it's redundant really to plug that in because we wouldn't be able to overlay again if we came back and it was dry. So we're only looking to data log and overlay dry circuits so we can get really consistent usable data. So we've got this Porsche on behind us for a full fast road setup. They were having some issues this morning out there with turn-in oversteer, which is quite rare for these out the factory. Usually they're quite a balanced chassis, and if anything they push for understeer. So whilst putting the settings on, we checked over what was on there to begin with, and one of the rear wheels was actually dead straight, the other one was towing in. So it was on the left-hand side, so through the right-handers, so that's why the rear is just stepping out and rotating. So we've evened that back out and given it towing on both sides, and that's going to bring stability back into the chassis, and it's going to help them out there, especially in these conditions, just get the chassis more stable and get a lot more trust into it. So one mod you can do on the GT4 is standard, and it's quite a nice mod because you could do it on your driveway just with a T25 socket, is removing these two air dams. So these are under the front bumper at the front of the wheel arch, and they're effectively a spoiler. So in the bumper there's a moulded venturi duct that gives front downforce. These stop that working. So all you do is remove the two screws, take this piece of plastic off and put the screws back in, and then you've opened up the venturi tunnel, so it immediately gives more front downforce to help with understeer. That's a really nice upgrade you can do literally on your driveway just to get a bit more nose on your Porsche if you don't have time to get it set up before a track day. So these are in there as standard to give that understeer in the chassis. So they're in there to change the balance as standard so the nose does push on. So when you take these out, it'll give more nose and it'll make the car more neutral and more tendent to rotate, but it's a much nicer chassis to have below you. It's lunchtime now, so straight after lunch the coastal layout has been put out on track, so we're going to head out after lunch. It's still raining. I think it's due to rain for the rest of the day. It might lighten up a little bit, but it's going to remain wet. But we're going to get out there and give the coastal layout a try, which is a bit more unsettling, if anything, as you come through the corkscrew, because it's slightly off camber and it's quick direction changes. So it'll be a really good test to see if that rear stability's worked with our camber settings on there, and be able to just push that and see where the car starts to brake, if we get understeer, oversteer, or if it's still quite nice and neutral. This is the Anglesey layout, so you've got the pit lane here. So this morning's layout was full circuit, so you were coming up the top here, down, and then it's a hard left, really long straight into a tight right hairpin, long straight again into a tight left onto the pit straight. This is a really off camber corner as well, so you've got to be careful, especially in these conditions. This afternoon, they're going to block off here and here, and it turns it into a corkscrew down the hill. So you're coming down here, instead of holding a long left-hander, you're going to transition faster into the right, really nice tight right, slightly off camber, and back into the off camber left. But you're carrying a bit less pace through here than you would off the end of this straight. So it makes for a nice balance. You can get on the throttle a bit sooner because it's a bit more of a straight line onto the pit straight there. So it's a little bit more fun, I think. So we just finished our final Porsche setup of the day, and the weather has finally decided to brighten up a final bit. We're in the last 45 minutes of the day now, so we're going to jump in the BM and we're going to go and try and get some not torrential laps in. Still quite wet, but it's a lot better than before, so we should get a bit of feedback from the car this time. So we're going to head out now and get a few laps in.
that you turned on?
Traction.
Oh, okay.
So we're all finished up here at Anglesey. The weather didn't brighten up for us at all really, so we ended up having quite a few wet laps. The last few laps there were a bit more greasy rather than torrential like before, and one of the key things we did actually notice then was the understeer is just still so present. So you've got to feed the nose in. In the wet weather, you have to wait for the nose to come in, really hold off on the throttle, and then collect it for the exit. So really big understeer problem still. And another issue we noticed was under really heavy braking, and even in the wet conditions, under really heavy braking, the nose was dipping quite substantially, and it was unloading the rears enough for the rear to start squirming quite aggressively. So that shows that we're too soft on the front as well. So we could do with getting the rake angle fixed and also firming up the front a little bit to stop that compression happening under brakes, which is unsettling the rear. So we've got a few things to address off the back of a wet track day. So we're looking forward to going back to the workshop, making a few more changes to the suspension, and then we're going to head to a dry track day and see how it performs and try and get some data as well.